Well, I came from the country, as you probably know, and I was working with Richardson and Wrench in 92 Pitt Street, Sydney. And as an assistant auctioneer, my job was to sit out on the front desk, if you like, and deal with people off the street. And in came one day a guy called Lewis Tyrer, who was in real estate and lumber in Houston. He had the bowler tie and the boots and the belt, and we got on well, and I took him around Sydney, showed him about. He said, if you ever come to ever come to Houston, give me a ring. That was in the early 70s. In 75, I had started my own real estate business in Sydney called J.M. Miller and Sons, and I was working on a deal out here just not far from here, really, doing a sale to the permanent trustee, or a perpetual trustee, permanent. We were buying it through Jones Lang, and they dudded me on the commission. So I said, this business I'm not going to do this, because you haven't got control of it to the end. You can get dudded by an agent, a vendor, a lawyer, a member of the family. So I said, I'm off to the States to look for something in real estate that isn't here. So with that, I called Lewis and said, yeah, I'm coming over, and that I did. And I went to Houston. He picked me up in his big limo, and we went to a ball game, and he took me to his storage facility, which was, now I'm talking about 75 here, so it's early days in America too. And it was a drive-up facility in Houston. So I just said, after spending a day with him, I could see that had an application. I could see, I understood, so I said, well, that'll do. I'm going home now to give this a go. So that's where I saw it, and that's where and it was the early days of storage. I think public storage only got going in the early 70s too, so it'll be interesting. I see they're making a bid for national self-storage, so if they end up back here, they tried to buy my business a few times in that period, but we were always too far apart. The first answer that I'll give you on that is, I got a DA for a storage facility in Herbert Street, St Leonard's, and it was a leasehold from the railway that I'd done a deal with the company that owned it, and for not a lot of money. So went ahead and had the DA done. I also took an ad in the Yellow Pages. Actually, I've got a copy of it here. Mini storage, Herbert Street, St Leonard's, and a phone number. Now that phone number was my office in 26 O'Connell Street. But because I got dud on the site, I didn't build the facility, you see. So I had that running for 12 months and the phone ringing. So I was able to do a marketing, by default marketing, and we just kept putting the price up until we saw a resistance. So that was the very essential part of the early days when, as you know, before that, the only storage really individually was a garage under a block of flats. So that was the market tester, if you like, for the rent. So then I got a building in 16 Bun Street, Pyrmont, which was a Kerneer's Rope building, and it was a 3-story, and that was where it started. And I did that in a joint venture, and we sold that, and then I did Tempe, and then Ultimo 1 at 444 Jones Street. So that was how we got into those two properties. Now, it was always said that high-rise storage wouldn't work. It's all because the public thought the convenience was driving up. So we had Tempe, which was single level out in the Princes Highway, and Ultimo, which was a 5-story up in lifts. And now I've got the book in my records of the rental increase and the occupancy growth in there, and they both went up at the same way. So therefore, as a result of that, we knew that high-rise worked as well as drive-up. All you had to do was have the right location. And from that on, whether it was high-rise or single level, it didn't worry us because we knew that it would work. Of course, the other problem was traffic access and egress. And so we got a traffic consultant and recorded all the movements of those two facilities, Tempe and Ultimo, on a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis to be able to prove to approval authorities that it was a low traffic generator. And basically that stood by us all the way, and I'm not sure whether it's still about those sort of figures, but when you came across an objection in a local council, we had the data, the stats to prove it. There wasn't at any one time any more than so many cars. So relating that to a square meterage basis, we were able to set a formula for traffic. But that was a really big issue in the early days. How it happened, I think I'd just finished a site at Wentworthville on the Great Western Highway, and the rental up was a bit slow, so I rang Singo because I'd done some work with Singo on 2K wireless when he was at radio. And I said, do you think if I went to television I could increase the occupancy or the inquiry? And he said, absolutely, mate. So that was the only research I did. And so I spent $80,000 getting the production and taking a section of time. What I didn't have was any experience that this would work. So I didn't tell my partner at that stage. The first he saw of it was when he turned the news on Channel 7 one night and saw this television ad. If you remember the ad, it had a jingle or a logo. That's why you need it. And so there was a section of the population, young people, that grew up with that. And they still have it. When you meet a 50-year-old, they know that jingle. As I said earlier, I wasn't worried about everyone else benefiting because it was helping me, and that was the prime object. And as I also added, that if your business was getting inquiry, you would fill up and we could move the rates quicker. Well, from that first trip to the States, I went back pretty much every year then for about the first next 20 years. And I developed a great relationship with people in the same position I was growing up in the States. So, and I would rekindle that every year, and it gave me confidence to keep going. In the first 10 years of my development, I was about one of the few. And you keep buying sites and going, you're wondering. But by going back there every year, I knew what was happening there, and we're a very similar sort of a lifestyle people to them. So that basically gave me the confidence to be able to do it. So there was a whole group of those people. Then, as you know, we went into record storage, and so we did that again to the conferences. And then, of course, there were all the locals like yourself who were committed to the business and were all growing equally with it. So we would meet around the traps and discuss the things, and not probably as much as open as you do now, I probably think. And then, as you know, my son came in, and that was a fulfilment. And then I had a partner, Macquarie Bank, who were very good partners, but they wanted out, and so that was about